Hello, Sandra. How are you?
I'm very well, Nicola. How are you today?
I'm fine. I can't believe how quick the week has flown by.
I know.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
seems to be on roller skates.
yeah. And it's gone faster for
Just
you.
flies past.
Yeah, it's gone faster for you because it's already Friday in
I
Australia.
know. Friday morning.
There we are. So, what have you been up to this week?
Oh, what have I been doing this week? I've been still working on Elizabeth.
Yes.
I've been doing a little bit of research, like I do every week,
Yeah.
and I've started charting a new sampler, which
Ah,
is quite beautiful. And
yes.
it's
That's Jane.
uh, that's Jane. Yes, I'm in
Yes.
the early stages.
That's lovely.
It's
And yes, and Leona's going to be model stitching Jane for us.
Yes, she is, and it's a beautiful sample, and hopefully she'll enjoy stitching it.
I'm sure
It's
she
nearly
will.
all, it's all cross stitch and
Yeah,
just a tiny little bit of over ones,
yes,
and that,
yeah. Oh, well,
which is quite interesting on the sampler because it's
good.
on Penelope canvas, and
Right, yes.
so that's it's a bit different, to see
Hmm.
over ones on the canvas,
Yes, yeah.
and it, and
So, well, I look forward to seeing some screenshots as you sort of get the sampler together. So,
yes, when I
yeah,
get a little bit more, and then once I get the border worked out,
yeah,
you'll
that'll be.
start
Well,
seeing
that's quite a
photos of it.
border you've got to work out.
Oh, it has the most beautiful border, and
Yeah,
it's really lovely.
yeah. It's just full of.
And
Well, it's lots of blooms.
it has actually lots and lots of different colours,
Yes.
but there's only some colours. There's only little pieces,
Hmm.
so they appear in just one or two motifs, and no, it's really lovely. It's a good sampler if you've got a lot of leftover threads,
Well,
that you can use up.
yeah, yeah. I often think, when you look at a sampler, that the little girls have used lots of leftover threads, which explains
Yes,
why there's so many greens and there's always lots of
yes,
greens.
I totally agree.
Yes,
But
I do
no, it
think that.
has a lot of bits like that. So you'll be searching through your threads for all the different colours.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's funny
But
because I have some spot samplers, Victorian spot samplers. So, and they're full of Berlin woolwork
yes,
patterns. And I actually sat down one day, and within the first three or four patterns that were recorded, I think I counted 35 different colours.
oh
And
my
I
gosh.
thought, I'm leaving this one to another day. And that was just scraps out of their workbox. I'm quite
Yes,
convinced of that. Yes, yeah,
yes. Yeah, if it sort of works, similar to what they want to put in, I think they put it in.
that's right.
But no, it's
Yes,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I've had a really busy week. Really busy week. I finished the model.
Yes,
So that's been a long time because I started it and then another sampler came along, so I put it down and I carried on with that. And of course, with doing some charting for our stitchers, that takes away my
yes,
stitching time. So it seems as if I've been stitching this one forever, when in fact,
yes, it's a
really,
beautiful
it
sampler.
is. I haven't really spent that much time stitching her because she comes together very easy. So I went off to the framers to get the mount board, and then I came back and I stretched and I laced her.
Yes,
Lacing does take a long time, and I think probably I overlace. But I think that when you lace very, very closely together, it just reflects on the front of the sampler. You don't get threads pulling out of line. You get this lovely even tension. So
yes,
yeah, so that probably took me, I don't know, a good hour to do. And you're forever rethreading your needle. And
yes. It doesn't take long before you run out.
no, it doesn't, because if you have too long a thread, it knots as you're pulling it. So it's always a
Yes.
fine balance between getting away with as long a thread as you can.
Yes.
And of course, the little knot that you use to tie the two threads together that they actually lock, it's a tricky little knot to do. And I must go down to the cove here where the fishermen are and show them this little knot and find out what it's called. And then when I know the proper name for it, maybe we can do a little video
Yes.
showing how to do that. But I don't know what the knot's called.
Yes, a fisherman will tell you.
A fisherman will tell me, yes.
Yes.
I also look in one of Ray's books on knots. He has books on knots from
Yes,
sailing.
that was the reef knot. The reef knot?
No, it's not a reef knot. To be honest with you, I've never seen it before. But when you lock it into place, you hear it click, and then you can cut it very close to the knot, and you can pull, and it will not.
And it won't undo.
Will not come loose. And of course, you need it to be stable because when you are lacing, you are putting quite a bit of pressure on the thread.
Yes.
So I went to the framers yesterday for the mount board. So I spent yesterday afternoon lacing Sarah, and then today I went back to the framers and I was picking frames. Now I'm showing on the screen not this sampler, but one of the sister samplers. I'm just showing 4 different frames, and I think that the frame that you choose for a sampler can really alter how the sampler looks, and it even affects the colour of the linen. I'm showing 4 photographs on the screen, and those were taken on the counter in the framers, and the sampler hasn't moved, and these photographs were all taken within minutes of each other, so the light would have been stable. But the colour of the linen, when you have very dark, almost black wood mouldings against the linen, is very different to the colour of the linen when you have, like the lovely sort of mahogany and the redwood against it. So, it's all very important, your choices.
Yes, it is.
It is.
You've just got to get it so right.
That's right.
If you've got it right, the sampler will look $1 million, as they say.
That's right, yes. And the other thing is that, obviously, before we started hats, I only ever picked frames, mouldings, to how they looked hanging on my wall.
Yes.
But when you're choosing frames for models, you have to think how those frames photograph as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I found,
it's so important.
It is, and what I found as well, that some frames you will pick up a lot of glare from the camera flash as well.
Yes.
So lots of things to think about. So I have before now spent an hour in the framers and chosen a frame, and on the way back home I rang him and said, don't do anything, I've changed my mind. But that's a woman's prerogative to change her mind.
Yes, we're allowed to do that.
It is. So anyway, the model will be ready tomorrow afternoon to pick up. So and then I've got the photographer booked for Saturday. So it's all happening. Crack the whip and keep the ball rolling. So anyway, because I've finished that model, I've also started charting a new sampler, and it's really lovely. What I really enjoy is getting a new sampler and putting it on a little easel I have for the desk, and then I get my light with the magnifier, and I just love studying it. I could spend an afternoon just under, looking at it really closely under magnification, and I think that's sort of really nice bonding time, actually. And you start to get to know the little girl who stitched it.
Well, I discovered with Jane that I think she had blonde hair, because there's all blonde hairs on her.
Do you know what? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a DNA test done on that? No, it would. It would.
It would, yes. Yes. Find out relatives and that.
Yes. Why don't you take some of that hair and put it in an envelope and send it to
Oh,
me?
they're just strands, but there's not a lot.
Right.
But if I find some more, I'll
Yeah.
send it to you.
But I don't know. Do you have to have a root on the end of the hair?
I think you've got to have the root.
Right.
Yeah, you need the root on it
Okay. But
to get it.
wouldn't that be fantastic to sort of have a
Yes,
DNA analysis done?
yes.
Yeah.
Be funny. You get an empty envelope with it, 2 hairs.
Oh dear me. But Jane is a Welsh sampler, so
She is, yes.
yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yes,
So
people who like the sailing ships will like this one.
they will.
Has,
And cats.
has 2 ships on it.
Yes. So anyway, I made a good start, and the border's all charted, and I've actually started to stitch the border. And as you know, my border didn't meet up. I jinxed that last week.
A lot of hair pulling in Cornwall.
I know. So I've started again. So but there we are. Practice makes perfect, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was stitching the border on this new sampler, whose name is Martha,
Martha, okay.
I was listening to a program on my iPad, and it was a program about I can never quite say this, Sèvres porcelain.
Yes.
In 18th century France, and Dame Rosalind Saville was the presenter of the programme, and she was talking about the porcelain in the Wallace collection, and she referred to the Rococo period, and she said that the word for Rococo came from the vulgar Latin rocca, which meant stone. So I thought, oh, so I looked up from my needlework and I stopped my iPad and I Googled Rococo, and I just, you know what it is. My father has taught me that if I came across a word I didn't know how to spell, or I didn't know what it meant, I always go to the dictionary and look it up.
Yes.
So I always do this with Google now. So of course you go off on a hunt, and then I found out that the Middle French roach was rock. Now my go-to stitch book is The Proper Stitch by Darlene O'Steen, and she refers to the Rococo stitch and the Queen stitch, and really all she says in describing the stitch is Queen stitch, also known as Rococo stitch, though time-consuming, is one of the loveliest stitches found on works from the 17th century. And I quite agree, it is a very beautiful stitch. So I thought, well, she goes on to give comprehensive instructions about how to do the stitch and analyses the stitch. So I thought, I need to go maybe back into an older book. And one of the books I have, it's not an old book, but it's about old stitches, and it's Jackie Carey's Elizabethan Stitches. And this is a very interesting book. So I went to the back of the book and looked at stitches, and there was no mention of Rococo. Now, in her book, in the index, she has stitches, then she has modern stitches. So I looked under modern stitches, and it records Rococo. So if you turn to the page, Rococo doesn't appear as a section to itself. You find it under another stitch, and the stitch that you find it under is Elizabethan French stitch. And there's only one sentence that it's mentioned in, and it says there are several versions of modern French stitch, and its variation known as Rococo stitch. So, I would be really, really interested to know more about the history of Rococo stitch and why it became known as Queen Stitch later on. Do you know
Yes.
anything about the history of Rococo stitch?
Well, I have heard a long time ago that in after the American Revolution, Queen Stitch was called Queen Stitch, but after the Revolution, because they didn't want to have anything to do with royalty, they changed the name to Rococo. But I don't know why they did that.
Right.
So
because the American Revolution, now excuse my ignorance about this, but that is in the latter half of the 1700s.
I think it's 63. No,
but it's in the second half of the 1700s.
Yes.
Whereas
yes.
you know, like Jackie Carey's book is about Elizabethan stitches.
Yes.
So this is a long time before that, and she's
Yes.
calling this Rococo stitch, not Queen Stitch. So I always thought that Rococo came first, and then it became known as a Queen Stitch in more recent times.
Yes.
So
I know that in China, not China, the country, in porcelain,
right.
there is it's called creamware.
Right.
This like Wedgwood creamware. That's known as Queen. There's a certain type that's called Queen China, and it was named after Queen Charlotte, and the wife of George III.
Yeah.
And George III's, the reason why the American Revolution, or the king when the American Revolution was on. Yeah. It's called Queen Charlotte ware.
Right.
So it could be named after her as well. I'm not sure.
Well, it'd be interesting to find out. So I actually, probably one of the oldest books I've actually got on my shelf is Mary Thomas, if you're looking at stitches. And I looked in there and there was nothing about the history of the stitch. And I want to go online and have a look at the Dilmont book, just to see what they have to say. But if anybody who is listening or watching us that knows anything about the history of the Rococo or the Queen Stitch, or which name came first, it would be really interested to hear from them. Because if something comes to my mind, I always like to follow it through. And then when you do, you remember it. So
yes, actually, I think the American Revolution was in 1776. I've got that in my brain.
Okay, but that's way after
between Captain Cook
and that's way after
Captain Cook and
Elizabeth I.
Yes, it's way after.
So
that.
That's a long time afterwards. And Jackie wouldn't be calling it Rococo stitch if it was known as Queen Stitch in the Elizabethan period. She is using the terms that were used in that period. So I'd love to know. So I hope that somebody out there does know and can share that knowledge with us.
The brains trust.
That's right. We were talking about that last week, weren't we?
We were.
We were. But anyway, this programme that was on BBC iPlayer under the art section, it was very, very interesting, and it took you through the history of Serva porcelain. And not that it appeals to me; it's too ornate, too grand.
It's beautiful.
It is.
The Queen has a lot of it.
That's right. But you can really, really appreciate the workmanship. And Dame Rosalind was talking about the process of making it, and it was just fascinating. So if anybody is interested and they can access the BBC iPlayer, it's a programme that's well worth. Well, I listened to it rather than watched it because I was stitching, just occasionally looking at, but very, very enjoyable. Now, the other thing that I have really enjoyed this week is the Attic newsletter. And, it's the highlight of the month, twice a month, to get the Attic newsletter. And it's always I always love to sit down with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with no interruptions and just lose an hour. So the sampler of the month this month is Gigi's beautiful A Fair Lady sampler.
Yes, it's such a beautiful sampler.
It's
It has the
gorgeous,
most
isn't it?
beautiful motifs on it,
It
especially
does.
the one with the flowers.
Yes,
Love that.
it's so beautiful. Anyway, I spoke to Gigi on the phone on Tuesday, and it was Gigi's birthday. She was 84 years of age, which is
Happy birthday,
absolutely amazing.
Gigi.
Yeah, happy birthday, Gigi. Um, and what she does at 84 is amazing. I met Gigi at Nashville this year, and I
Yes.
got into the hotel after flying all day, and I was like, oh my God. And along bounces Gigi, full of life, and she was here, there, and everywhere, and she was chatting away, having a wonderful time. It was me thinking, oh God, I'm so tired with the time difference. So whatever Gigi's on, I want a little bit of it.
Yes, no. She looks quite well for an 84-year-old.
So chic, really, really
She
lovely.
is.
She is,
She's a
isn't
beautiful
she?
lady.
Absolutely. But in the newsletter, Jean has these beautiful threads laid out, and the colours are just absolutely gorgeous. And I was
Yes.
saying to Gigi how beautiful this sampler was, and she said, you have to see samplers in the flesh to appreciate them. So, Gigi, being this wonderful person that she is, I'm putting my gloves on. Can you guess why I'm putting these gloves on?
I don't know.
Well, I'm not going to carry out an operation, but the postman arrived today with a box, and when I opened the box, inside the box was this,
Oh my goodness.
which
It's
is
stunning.
the original. I'm going to stand up. So I think if I stand up, I can do this a little bit easier. Look at that. Isn't that
That's
lovely?
stunning. But
Absolutely.
no, I love there's a couple of things I love. I love the flowers in the vase,
Yeah.
and I love the is it a lemon or a pear
I think
on the
it's a
sewing?
pear. I think it's a pear.
It's beautiful.
Whoops.
And I know actually there's a couple of ladies in Australia who will be stitching that if it's a pear.
What's a pear got to do with Australia?
Oh no, there's some ladies in Australia who love pears.
Oh, right. Anyway,
They're,
this is absolutely beautiful, this sampler. And Inguna, who charts for Gigi, congratulations, Inguna. You have done a fantastic reproduction.
yes, she does beautiful work.
Absolutely. And looking at the close-up photographs of the model, it's a fantastic reproduction. So, ladies, this is a chart that's well worth having. It's absolutely exquisite. Well, in the box, there was a few more layers of tissue. Now, I'm just handling this very carefully because antique samplers are to be respected at all times, hence the gloves and all the tissue paper. So you need to bear with me while I move this to my little side table. And there's another one.
Oh, another beautiful one.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So anyway,
She really does have a beautiful collection of antique samplers.
This box is like Mary Poppins' handbag. Right?
They keep coming.
They keep coming. So let me just move this one very carefully now. I buy acid-free tissue paper in great big bundles, and I seem to go through a lot of it. Now, there's a story to why Gigi has sent all these samplers, and there's 5 samplers in total, and I'll tell you the story in a second. Let me just...
Yes.
Okay. Now this was a very interesting one. It's a darning sampler.
Oh, wonderful.
And do you know what? I would love to get a really nice darning sampler for hats. I think that's
Yes.
something that I would very much like to add to our portfolio at some stage.
Yes.
I think this is the last sampler coming up. Just a moment. Look at the ship.
Lovely.
And the,
the ship.
see
Yes.
the little wishing well?
Yes.
And
That's beautiful.
These are just absolutely gorgeous. So thank you, Gigi,
gorgeous.
for sending. And I'm going to be sending them back now after I've studied them a little bit longer. But that was just a wonderful treat to open this box today. And all these beautiful samplers were coming out. It's well worth putting gloves on if you handle samplers outside of their frame, just to protect them for posterity. So I also buy boxes of these gloves as well. Just a second. Anyway, I was speaking to Gigi, and she was telling me this story about how she was walking through, I think it was Tongreth, she said, and there was a flea market, and there was a stand, and with lots of like bric-a-brac on, and under a chamber pot. Do you call chamber pots in?
Yes, although I call them gazundas.
Gazundas, yeah, because they used to go under the bed.
Go under the bed.
My nana had a gazunda. Anyway, she spotted this chamber pot, and underneath the chamber pot, she could just see a sampler sticking out. And she was telling me about how she, it was the samplers she was after, but she was asking the prices of different items so that the guy didn't realise that it was the samplers that she was actually after. So it was a lovely story told in with Gigi's wonderful sort of, I know Gigi lives in Belgium, but it's very much a French accent. So it was just, it was lovely hearing that. So
that's lovely.
It was, isn't it? Anyway, in the Attic newsletter, obviously the focus is very much on celebrating Gigi Reese designs this month, and there's a lovely selection of Gigi's samplers, and this is only a fraction of what she's reproduced, but it's just amazing to look at the samplers and the variation of the samplers. It's not the same thing. There's a lovely breadth to her portfolio, and I think for me, one of the samplers that is an all-time favourite is I'm going to call it the Morris Dancer.
Yes, that's beautiful.
It is gorgeous, isn't it? Is it something like the actual samplers like Maria? Is it Maria Cooper? Anyway, what I always think of it as the Morris Dancer.
Keep talking.
And the photographs that Jean showed in the Attic newsletter. Maria Cooper. Oh yeah, my memory wasn't so bad. The photographs I'm showing on the screen were actually in a newsletter going back a long, long time ago, because this is the sampler that Joanne Hoffman stitched. And of course,
yes, it's beautiful.
Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely gorgeous. Stunning. So I think that's the one that I think, that is absolutely gorgeous. And when I was chatting to Gigi, I asked her, which are your favourites from all the samplers in your portfolio? And she had to think very hard, because that is a very difficult question to ask somebody. It's like asking somebody to choose which is their favourite child in their family.
Yes.
But she told me 2 samplers, and this was one of them. And then the other sampler that she said was a favourite was the lady in red spinning her wool. So you talk about this sampler, because I'm showing on the screen your model that you stitched?
Well, there's mine. Can you see it?
Yes.
I just love. I call them French cathedral samplers because I just love the altar and that's on them. And Gigi has quite a few in her collection. So I have this one and I have another one, Virginie Grimlou or something.
Virginie Grimaud, maybe. I don't know.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I have that. But there's a couple of others that she has that I don't have the charts. But I have 19 of Gigi's charts. I counted them all yesterday.
Yeah.
But no, she's got some beautiful samplers.
Absolutely.
And the other one I love is it's called the Rose Wreath sampler.
Oh, now that is stunning, isn't it?
But I haven't got to the good part because
the rose wreath.
The good part's down the bottom. But that is absolutely beautiful sampler.
I've seen that stitched on the internet. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It really is.
Yes, it is. It's really a beautiful sampler. Yeah. That's so. I don't get as much time as I used to have to work on it. But stitching the models.
Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? And I have 3 whips or unfinished. Well, they're probably unfinished. And they sort of ground to a halt when we started Hands Across the Sea samplers because it takes all your time. And one of my, I'm going to call them whips because I will finish them one day, is one of Gigi's.
Yes.
And it's the, I'll just move this on a second. It's the Saxony ATS, and this is as far as I got.
Yes, it's a beautiful. I have the chart of that one. It's beautiful.
Gorgeous, isn't it? So
yes,
that's as far as I got. Having done this much, I really must finish this at some stage.
Yes, maybe you should pick one day a week when you're not. One day a week, and you just stitch on that. Yeah, that's your.
I wish I had one day a week.
That's your Gigi day.
Yeah. I look at when I think that stitching is a hobby. I finished my professional career. I am officially retired, and stitching is meant to be a hobby. And Hands Across the Sea samplers was started as an extension of our mutual hobby. It seems to take every day up now. I feel as if I work 7 days a week. But I don't think
it's very time consuming.
It is, isn't it? And I think as well that the older you get, the quicker a day goes. I get up in the morning with a list of things I want to do, and I find hours have gone by and I haven't achieved a fraction of what I should do.
Yes. I'm a lot older than you, so my days are flying by.
Bertie takes a lot of my time, and I do love to walk. I'll go out walking for 3 or 4 hours, so that is probably where most of my time goes.
Yes.
But I also find that when I sort of start looking at needlework, time just whizzes by then. And I sit down in the evenings I do get to stitch. I sit down and sometimes I look up and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning and I've got no concept that is what the time is.
Yes, no, you get so involved in what you're doing and it just flies past.
You get transported into another world, you really do.
Yes.
Yeah, and especially if you're listening to a good audio book as you're stitching.
No, usually when I stitch, my husband, he likes watching crap.
Well, my husband has the golf on. Well, if there's golf on, he watches the golf. But he does also like documentaries and
Yeah, Bob likes documentaries, things on animals, and all these sorts of things. Some are good, but some I don't like that much. But I just get involved.
yeah. Ray was listening tonight about a program about artificial intelligence and how robots are taking over, all the jobs. I was thinking they should invent a robot to hand stitch.
Yes, you could say, hey, could you stitch this, please? They'll be bringing them out quicker than you can. I don't know. So quick.
No, the pleasure of a sampler is that it takes time, and that's, I can look at a sample and I can always tell, it brings back what my life was like when I was stitching. It's the same when you hear a song, like maybe from the 80s or the 70s, and it takes you back to when you first heard it, or, what you were going through in life. And I think that it's what makes samplers special to you. It's just the sheer hours that you put in with that, and your thoughts and your emotions as you're stitching it.
Yes, and they're very, when you sit down with a needle in your hand, it's very relaxing, and your body relaxes. And most of the time, if you've got a problem with it, then it's not so relaxing. But it's a pain in the bottom.
Yeah.
But no, most of the time, it's just a relaxing pleasure.
That's right. But I went
keeps you calm.
Absolutely. Oh God, absolutely. But I went several weeks with having no time to stitch at all, and when I did eventually sit down and pick up my needle, it was just, the feeling that comes over you is just amazing. It really is.
Yes.
We are. So anyway, we've digressed, haven't we?
We've gone off track.
We have gone off track. Now, I think one of the other samplers that you liked of Gigi's was Elise Schulter? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that.
Oh, hang on. Where is she? Yes, I like that one. Yes, there it is. There. Oh, it's got the. Hang on, I'll take it out of the plastic bag. It's beautiful. I love it reminds me of an Austrian one, or possibly Austrian or German, but it just reminds me of Austrian ones.
Yeah, it's got a beautiful border, and it's the linen is so well covered. I like samplers where there's a lot of coverage of the linen. It makes them interesting to look, and every time you look at it, you see something else.
Yes, no, it just reminds me of Austria, and I've been to Austria a few times, and this sounds a bit strange, but Austria has the most beautiful graves.
Graves?
They do. They're all covered in, like, I've usually been there in the spring, and they'd be covered with pansies and all these little flowers. That they plant them on the grave itself, and they're absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's so
they have strange. They have stone headstones as well, do they?
A lot of it I've seen, they're metal, a metal cross,
right?
And then the grave is just covered in like pansies and heartsease and all these little flowers that I love.
Yeah,
that's violas and things like that, and they're really beautiful. I think it's because in the spring, in the winter, they're all covered in snow, and they're really beautiful. Around Salzburg and Innsbruck, they're like that.
Yeah.
I like Austria. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah. I like walking through graveyards, actually. I like reading headstones. I think they're very interesting.
Yes. Now you see some beautiful ones. I love the ones with the angels. They have angel, what do you call them? Statues on them.
Yeah.
They're really lovely.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you get a lot of, I'll call them idiots, who like to go into graveyards, and these days all these young men have got nothing better to do. And they just go in and willy-nilly, hit them with like a baseball bat and just destroy them. It's really sad.
Where I live here, people are very, very respectful of graveyards, and you get lots of volunteers that go in and tend the graves. The graveyards are very well looked after. And we have two local churches, and as you've seen them when you've been here, and in the next little cove to us, which is a 4 or 5 minute walk, it's the cove where Poldark is filmed. They have a church actually on the beach, built into the side of the cliff, and in that churchyard there are several graves that mark shipwrecks. So there are several people in the grave, and there's one headstone. And it's really sad to read, the great loss of life that a shipwreck brought. It's quite sad. And then up in the village, the little church there, right by the church, there's one headstone, and it was the verger of the church. And he lost, I can't remember how many children, it was something like 5, 6 or 7 children within a few days of each other to something like, I don't know, scarlet fever, or, it was something like that. I don't know if that was all their children, but to lose so many children within a few days, and all these little children's names and their ages are recorded. I always, whenever I walk through the churchyard, because it is a shortcut through the village, so people do walk through, I always say a little prayer for them when I go past that one. So,
every time I come to England, I always like looking for churches, especially with the graveyards around. They're just so beautiful. When Bob and I came last time, I think I was driving him up the wall, because I think he got to the stage thinking ABC, and ABC is another bloody church. And that because I love English churches. They're beautiful. And cathedrals. I love cathedrals.
Yeah. Well, churches are a really good place to go to see needlework, because you get the kneelers that ladies of the parish have embroidered, and also,
Exeter Cathedral's got some beautiful ones.
But I think practically every church in England will have these kneelers, and then you have like the altar cloths, which are very, very interesting. You have the garments for the vicar, the priest, very nicely embroidered. And what I will do, I have got some photographs of some altar cloths and some vestments from Truro Cathedral. I was very, very lucky to go there one day when there was a group of needleworkers there that look after these items, and I got talking, and they actually took me down into the crypt, and I managed to spend about an hour and a half there with this lady, and she was talking through. So we'll do that on another video, and I'll dig out the photographs on that.
The last time I came, I went to Winchester Cathedral again, which was lovely. And it was all done up with the Christmas trees and the Christmas market outside. It was really, really lovely. And the French cathedral that I spent time in was Amiens. Amiens. I wanted to go to Rouen, but it was closed. I wanted to go there because I think William the Conqueror was buried there, and a few of. Because I'm related to William the Conqueror. He's my cousin. He's my 32nd cousin.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, first cousin. First cousins. Yes. So it's lovely.
Going back to the Attic newsletter, the other thing that caught my eye was the Crowns of the Kingdom by Rosewood Manor, and I just when you see that in the newsletter, you go, oh my gosh, that really, I love the colours on it. And I was speaking to Karen Kluber, the designer at Rosewood Manor, and she was telling me that this is actually part of a series and she started originally with the keys of the kingdom, and she did that in just a flat black, and then she did it in a metallic thread. And then the next one in the series were the crosses of the kingdom, and the crowns of the kingdom was the third one, and then the last one was the hearts of the kingdom, and they're all very, very pretty.
Yes, they are.
They
They're
are,
beautiful.
aren't they? And then they took one of the crowns from the crowns of the kingdom and made it into a little ornament as well, which I thought was absolutely delightful. The little Mill Hill bees, very, very pretty. And I love Rosewood Manor designs.
Yes, she has some beautiful designs in her
gorgeous.
portfolio.
Absolutely. In fact, if I had to think of a favourite, I couldn't think of one. Just one. It would have to be several. But I think that one of the most beautiful ones is the inspiration. And I haven't got any photographs to show you. But when I was speaking to Karen on the telephone, she's going to join us between now and Nashville, and she's going to, she's going to talk about some of her her designs for Nashville, and she'll tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind a lot of her designs. So I'm going to really look forward to that. The newsletter this month was so much lovely information in there. And did you notice that Susanna Milne was in the newsletter?
Yes, I saw.
It was the original.
She's a beautiful sampler.
She's gorgeous, isn't she? And that was your first reproduction.
Yes, that was my first one.
Yeah. So I sent the original over to Jean probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks ago now. And when the Jackie Duplessis workshop was on, one of the ladies, her wedding anniversary was the 24th of July, and the date on Susanna Milne is the 24th of July. So Susanna had to go to this lady. So what a wonderful wedding anniversary present from her husband.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It is, isn't it? So yeah, really lovely. And I think that you did a fantastic reproduction of Susanna.
Yes, thank you. Now, she is really beautiful. I love samplers with baskets.
Yes.
And the beautiful flowers.
Yeah, that basket is really lovely with the it's like a daffodil and a rose, I think, in there, isn't it?
Yes.
And I love the little larks. They're just so cheeky.
Yes, when I was stitching that, I loved a piece of music called The Lark Ascending. So that was in my head all the time.
Yeah. I think one of the
and the hop border.
Yeah, the border, the hops, isn't it? It's just absolutely beautiful. And of course, she came from Kent, which is an area that has a strong association with hops. But what was really lovely about Susanna was that we managed to get a photograph of Susanna, and that was a lovely thing to find.
Yes, you don't usually find photos of the stitches, so it was an added bonus.
That's right. Much later in her life, but
of course, yes,
that was really, really nice. But I think that one of the most lovely things about Susanna is her colours, and you can see on the original sampler that beautiful green. It sort of bursts off the linen, which is absolutely lovely. And the other thing that's really nice about Susanna is that there's no over one. I'm writing that. The first was all over two.
Yes. No, it's a good sampler for a beginner.
Yes, it is, isn't it? And there's just a tiny little bit of satin stitch, so it's a nice little stepping stone if you wish to try satin stitch. Yeah.
Yes, but if you're not confident in doing it, you can do it in cross stitch.
Yes, that's true.
That particular spot.
Yeah,
where it is.
Absolutely. It's quite funny actually because like you know Susanna's gone over and the girls have gone over as well.
Yes.
And we've got a sampler coming back now. And that's the beautiful Mary Lee.
Lee,
That's
yes.
right. Now she's been the Attic's 2017 stitch along, and
Yes.
obviously the stitch along is coming to an end as 2017 is coming to an end. So Mary Lee is coming back over to England to go to Jackie, who's the model
Yes.
stitcher, and she's going to be so excited to actually have that hanging in her home. But she's going to need a big wall because Mary Lee is a very big sampler.
Yes.
And this week on the social media groups, Sonia posted her finish of Mary Lee, and
I saw that.
yeah, besides the model that I'm showing on the screen, I'm actually showing some of the photographs that Sonia posted of her Mary Lee, and I think what caught my eye about Mary Lee when I first saw her was the beautiful shade of blue, and that is the shade of blue that is on the front of the sampler. The colours I used when I reproduced this were the colours on the front of the sampler today. I've never taken it off the backboard, so I've never actually seen the back colours. But Mary's going to be conserved in 2018. And when they do take her off the backboard, I'll get to see some photographs. So I will share that with you, and people who listen and watch the videos will get to see those photographs as well. So that's
Yes.
quite exciting. And talking of models, what was really lovely to see a few weeks ago was Paola and Molly at that Jackie du Plessis weekend at the Attic. And there's a lovely photograph of the two of them holding up the sister samplers, and
Yes.
behind them are some of our samplers that are displayed at the Attic. And it tickled me when I saw three of the samplers, and that's Mary Ann, Elizabeth Furness, and Hannah Coates, because I met Paola last year in England, because Paola lives in Belgium, and she came over to England and I met her, and we had a lovely time together, and we were with a group of other ladies, and I had three samplers with me, and that was Mary Ann Bournes, Hannah Coates, and Elizabeth Furness. So Paola actually got to see those three samplers in England, and there she is in America with the same three samplers. The actual models behind her. So I thought that was quite a sort of coincidence to see that. The originals of the sisters are at Sassy Jack's Stitchery in Asheville, North Carolina, and Kimberly, who is the store owner there, she posted a lovely photograph on the internet of two sisters holding the sisters. I miss those samplers.
They're beautiful.
They are
There
gorgeous.
were two samples that I really loved. If I wasn't stitching models, I'd be stitching Anne and Isabel.
Absolutely. So, but I'm going to get to see them in January.
Yes.
And it's funny because I'm going to be at Sassy Jack's first, where I'll get to see the original sisters, and then straight after that I'll be at the Attic, where I'll get to see the models. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
That's good.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Now, got a little bit of news for you.
Yes.
The beautiful Elizabeth Bevan.
Yes.
Elizabeth is going to go over to Sassy Jack's, and she's going to live at Sassy Jack's. And I've got the original here, and I'll be packing her up in the next couple of days to send her over. So I thought I would just take, while I've got her down, just to show this beautiful sampler. And Elizabeth, she is in absolutely fantastic condition. I'm sorry I'm picking up the reflection, but there's not a lot, you can do when you've got glass. Oh, that basket is so...
That basket is gorgeous.
So
it's really lovely.
isn't it?
And I love the parrot.
Oh, well, it's the bee skeps that caught my eye first of all with this sampler.
Yes, no, it's a beautiful sampler.
Because this is a reverse, I get so confused about which way to move it.
Yes, no, it's a beautiful sampler.
Really lovely sampler. Anyway, so this is going off to Sassy Jack's, and it will be on permanent display there. And I'm also sending to Kimberly Elizabeth Harding and Forfeit. So, for stitchers who would like to see the originals of Isabella and Anne Uffendale, Elizabeth Bevan, Elizabeth Harding and Anne Forfeit, they can be seen at Sassy Jack's. But before you go, you should telephone Kimberly, because she is sending the Uffendales off to be conserved and to be framed. So, you don't want to make the journey specifically to see them and they're not there. So, check before you go. And I'm really pleased that Kimberly's having these samplers, because it means that lots of stitchers will actually get to see the originals, and I think that's a really nice thing. And on the screen, I'm actually showing the photograph of the model of Elizabeth Harding and the model of Elizabeth Bevan, but I'm actually showing the antique sampler of Anne Forfeit. And again, I'm going to miss them, because they are actually in my breakfast room, these three samplers. And it's funny, they all hang alongside each other. So I'm going to have to find something else to go. I know, but that won't be difficult.
No, that won't be difficult.
It won't be difficult, no. I've had a few deliveries this week, but I haven't shown my husband yet, so I better not show him.
Secrets,
yes. No, he knows there's been a few boxes come, but he just doesn't know what's inside them yet.
You'll hang them up and he'll say, "Is that you?" And you go, "Oh no, that old thing."
I say that with clothes as well.
Yes, my mother taught me that.
Yeah. So, although I prefer to buy samplers than clothes.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that caught my eye this week, and it wasn't in the Attic newsletter, it was actually on social media, and it was a beautiful sampler that Linda of Erica Michael Designs is actually reproducing.
That's gorgeous. I know what you're going to say.
She is absolutely gorgeous. So I spoke to Linda, and she gave me permission to show her photograph in the video. And this sampler is, wow.
Stunning.
Absolutely stunning. I'm itching to stitch it. I'm itching to own it. But Linda said it's not for sale. The name on the sampler is either Anne Monsard or Monford or maybe Mansard. But the sampler, when I looked at it, first of all, I thought, oh, Scottish. And then I thought, oh, there's a little elements of Norfolk in this sampler as well.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, like the twisted ribbon band with the flowers, that's Scottish. But then you look at the bottom, and you look in the as you're looking at it, the left hand bottom corner, and you see that cornucopia, and you would associate that with a Norfolk sampler. And then you look at the little mound at the bottom and the centre, and you would think Norfolk with that as well. So the sampler confuses me a little bit when I look at it. What are your thoughts on the sampler?
Yes, I thought the same when I first saw it. I thought it was Norfolk,
Yeah,
and I can see where you think that it's Scottish because of that border in the middle. But
yeah.
it's just a beautiful sampler. And I had a look at the name, and I'm not sure if it's French. The name is French.
Well, France has great ties with Scotland.
Yes, they do.
You know,
And it could have been French family who came over to England or Scotland
absolutely, yeah.
after the Revolution.
Mm,
That's a thought,
yeah.
because
But
no,
Montfort is an English name, or
yes,
it's a surname you would see in this country, um, but you know, obviously Linda will tell us more as she researches the
yes,
sampler. But underneath the little ribbon band, those little
yes,
figures within the trees, that's very Norfolk as well.
yes.
Yeah,
Mm,
there's lots of
no,
elements in that. But anyway, I can't wait at Nashville to go into Linda's room to see.
and see it.
I hope she has the antique as well. There that'd be
Yes,
lovely. So anyway,
no, it's beautiful.
I've started my shopping list. So on the top of my list at the moment of charts to buy is this beautiful sampler. It's just
It's
gorgeous.
gorgeous. Yes, it's
Absolutely
really lovely.
really lovely. And
Mm.
we know when you reproduce a sampler like this, the amount of hours you have to put in to get in that chart, to reproduce it, you know, it's just the number of hours is just.
It's not a 5-minute job.
It's not a you're not going to sit there go click 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 and you've got a charter. That is sort of that's really labour intensive and it's painstaking. So thank you to Linda for bringing out something like this for stitchers to enjoy.
Yes, no, it's a beautiful sampler,
Beautiful,
and that
absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait. I can't
you
wait.
might have to buy 2 charts when you go shopping.
Right, okay, I'll get you one as well.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It is absolutely gorgeous. Um, Talking of gorgeous samplers, I love secondhand bookstores, and
Yes,
I spend a lot of time in bookstores, and we're very lucky in this area. There are lots of secondhand bookstores, including in the village, actually. And you think, how can a bookstore in a little village make a living? But of course, these secondhand bookstores, they actually are trading on the internet. You go onto Amazon and on Marketplace, and the secondhand books, this is how they sell their books. So,
yes,
in particular, the bookstore in the village, the gentleman there, when I walk past with Bertie, he'll wave if he's got something of interest to me. And, often I will go up and I'll spend, an hour or 2 hours just sat on the floor with the book. And he doesn't mind because he knows I buy a lot of books from him. Anyway, the end of last week, he told me he didn't have the book, but he mentioned a book to me that he thought I would be interested in because you're not aware of every book that's out there, so it's good when somebody else says to you, "Oh, you might be interested in this book." And the last week that we spoke about buying exhibition catalogues.
yes.
Well, another form of catalogue is an auction catalogue. And the book that the gentleman in my bookstore told me about was the Joan Stephens collection. And
It's a beautiful sample on the front.
isn't it gorgeous? Absolutely gorgeous.
It's
And I'm showing
gorgeous.
a colour photograph of it now. And I'd never heard of Joan Stephens before.
No, either have I.
No. But anyway, I ordered the book when I saw it, and this book I saw it for $70, I saw it for $50, but on Amazon.co UK and Amazon.com, you can actually get this book for, I think it's about $20 plus shipping. And it's not a huge book. You can see the size of it, okay? But it is packed full of some beautiful samplers. And obviously, when you open up an auction catalogue, it's got the terms and conditions. But when you actually get into the catalogue, there's 3 people write about Joan Stephens. And the first person who writes about Joan is Betty Ring.
Yes.
And it's headed Remembering Joan Stephens. And Betty Ring says, Joan Stephens was one of the smartest, most energetic and generous women I have ever known, but at the same time so quiet and modest about her knowledge and accomplishments that one recognised her exceptional abilities gradually from association with her. And Betty goes on, talking about quite a bit. And then she says further down, shortly after we met, I began to realise that Joan probably knew more about quilts than anybody. She then had a large collection of her own, and within a few years she would analyse the quilt collection at the Smithsonian for the exhibition of 1990. She had a vast knowledge of weaves, threads, printed textiles, every imaginable stitch that could be performed with a needle, and the function of all the needlework tools of the last 3 centuries. I never really knew when or how she managed to learn all this. About 1980, Joan became seriously interested in collecting samplers and needlework pictures, so when we met we had an instant rapport. In typical fashion, Joan commenced sampler collecting with studious care and well-defined purpose. She bought representative examples of the most important type of American schoolgirl embroideries, but she also found superb English work irresistible. Her interest in excellence, as well as the historic background of these objects, resulted in this exceptional collection. She was never for a moment content, and was actively enlarging her collection when a sudden illness took her life in July 1995, and in less than a year Bob followed her. Bob was her husband.
Yes.
And Betty finishes saying, it pleases me enormously to see Joan's important collection permanently recorded in this catalogue, and I am confident that it will be an enduring source of information for collectors and scholars. It was a joy to see the pleasure this collection brought to Joan, and I know that she wanted these cherished works of youthful hands to continue being loved and enjoyed by successive owners as much as they were by her. I just thought that was wonderful.
It's a beautiful epitaph to.
Yes, her collection is her epitaph, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes.
But another 2 people go on to write about Joan, but I just thought that was absolutely lovely. I had to share it with you. But I do love sampler collecting with studious care and well-defined purpose. That's lovely.
That's wonderful.
So anyway, I've really enjoyed looking through this book, and I have to admit my knowledge of American schoolgirl samplers is practically zilch. I do not know much about them at all. So I think I'm going to learn a little bit studying this book. I know that this particular sampler, this one here, and her name is Magdalene Gombold from New York. This auction was in 1997, and I know that sampler resold, I think, in 2007 for $30,000 US. So, you know, obviously people really did value her collection. But,
Yes.
you know, these second-hand needlework books, references, resources, they're well worth collecting. So that was this week's addition to my library. So I want to thank my lovely bookman, my bookstore owner, for thinking of me. So yeah.
No, it's lovely that he's got to know what you like, and when he sees them, he either gets them for you or points you in their
Yeah, you know,
direction.
he's really good because he
It's
knows that,
lovely.
because he gets, like, I suppose, you know, he probably buys books at auctions, and he probably buys the contents of people's libraries, and he'll pull books that
Yes.
he knows I'm interested in. But this one he actually saw on the internet and thought, I would like to know
Yes.
about it. So
Yes.
yeah, that was really nice. And the other thing that came this week, it's been a week of surprises, was I had a little gift in the post from Sigrid, and
Yes.
it was a pair of scissors. And Sigrid said that whilst these aren't expensive scissors, that these scissors, in her opinion, are one of the best ones for cutting threads for cut and drawn work. And here they are. And they do feel very nice in the hand, because, you know, when you are cutting threads in hardhander, you're handling your scissors an awful lot, and they have a
Yes.
very decisive close on them, and they are
Yes.
very, very pointy, and they are extremely sharp. So I think that
Yes.
Sigrid is absolutely right. These are super scissors for you know, cutting linen thread. If you can hear some funny noises, Bertie's under the desk.
Oh, right.
And he's been moving around, and he's been snoring as well. It might not pick up on the microphone, but just in case anybody
What
can hear some funny noises, it's not me.
What brand are the scissors?
Oh, they are Prim
Oh, right.
fine embroidery scissors, and they're 4-inch. Yeah,
Okay.
and they're really good. So I thought I would just
Yes.
share those with you.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yes, I love doing hardhanger.
Yeah, yeah. The sampler that I've started to reproduce, it has a really lovely verse on there, and although the sampler doesn't give the title of the verse, it's actually Aga's wish, and it says, "Fountain of blessing, ever blessed, enriching all possessed, by whom the whole creation's fed, give me each day my daily bread. To thee my very life I owe, from thee do all my comforts flow, and every blessing that I need must from thy bounteous hand proceed. Great things are not what I desire, nor dainty meat, nor rich attire. Content with little would I be, that little, Lord, must come from thee. While wicked men with all their store are ever grasping after more, with Aga's wish content I'll live, nor grudge them all the world can give." I'd never seen this verse before.
No, I've never heard of it
I'd never
before.
heard of it before. So it was good old Google. And what I found was that Martha had changed some of the words on this verse, just a few words here and there. But of course, I suppose that verses got distorted as they were passed around the country. But
Yes.
anyway, this was quite interesting, because Aga's wish was written by Benjamin Beddoe, who lived between 1717 and 1795. In 1740, he became the pastor of a Baptist church in Bourton-on-the-Water in Gloucestershire, England, and he was ordained in 1743. Sorry about the background noise. Bertie is moving around.
That's okay.
He continued in this ministry for 55 years. That's a long time to be
Yes,
to be
minister
a minister
in the
of
same
one
church.
place. Yeah. And he became a very well-known preacher. And in 1770, he received an MA degree from Providence College, Rhode Island, in the US.
Oh,
So I thought, oh, Rhode
interesting.
Island. Yeah, that's very interesting. Anyway, he was a very prolific hymn writer, composing over 830 hymns during his lifetime. And he wrote these hymns to be sung after his Sunday sermon each week. And these hymns related to the message that he preached.
Oh,
So
right.
they
That's
weren't originally intended for publication, but in 1818 they were, I can never say this word, they were published after his death, a collection of 830 hymns, which was called Hymns Adapted to Public Worship or Family Devotion. Now, considering that he is so prolific, and 830 odd hymns is a lot by anybody's standard, I can't believe that we've never come across this person with the research we've done on different hymns and verses.
No, and I wonder these days if his hymns are still sung.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Yeah.
So there's a few things I've learnt this week.
You've been on a roll.
I have, haven't I?
Yes.
So yeah. So have you got any plans for the week ahead?
Sophia and my daughter-in-law, her mother, are coming on Monday, which will be lovely to spend the day with them. And that's hello, BB.
It's way past his bedtime. He probably says, "Mummy, I want to go to bed."
Yes, and but other than that, no. We just take the day as it comes.
Well, I've got, as I said, the frame model has got to be picked up tomorrow. I've got the photographer coming Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday I'm away next week. I'm having a couple of days with one of my besties, Elizabeth, who you know. So we're going to go away and have a few days in a rather nice hotel, having some spa treatments, which is our Christmas present to each other.
Yes, you'll come back all relaxed and
hopefully all beautiful.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, and relaxed. So so I'm going to be leaving Bertie and Ray to their own devices. So I don't quite know what I'll come back to. So
I'm sure the pair of them will cope together.
So I think I'd better go and let Bertie out and then take him to bed.
Okay.
So anyway,
all right.
It's been lovely chatting again.
Yes.
All right. So
talk to you later.
Yes. All right then.
Okay.
Nighty night. Bye bye.
See you later. Bye bye.